Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, back with another video. So let's talk about this upcoming card that's taking place in Saudi Arabia this weekend, with Anthony Joshua topping the bill. So, a few people asked me my thoughts on this card, and initially I wasn't going to say anything about it, because if truth be told, it doesn't really interest me, and I'll get into that later. But the reason I decided to ultimately make a video about it is because over the past few weeks or so, I've been kind of observing quietly the response to this card and just how people see it in general, not only casual boxing fans but even hardcore boxing fans and OGs in the YTBC, and just how they see this card. And I've noticed that this card seems to be getting an overwhelmingly positive response from boxing fans in general, and I've even seen some people suggest that it's the best card they've seen in recent years in terms of the matchups. You know, guys, when I saw that, I'm not even kidding here. I pissed myself laughing, and I shook my head in pure disbelief, because the fact that this card, with the kind of fights that we're being presented on it, is getting people so excited and is getting such a positive response from boxing fans, it goes to show you just how utterly garbage boxing has become. Boxing nowadays is so boring, it's so inconsequential, and it's just a complete and utter waste of time and energy that even a card as lame and as inconsequential as this one is getting such an overwhelmingly positive response. So, as I mentioned, the card's being topped by Anthony Joshua, and he's taken on Otto Wallin. That's the main event of the card. So I'm going to go through every single fight on this card, or at least all the main ones that people are talking about, and I'm going to give a brief assessment of each of them, and then we'll summarise the whole thing at the end. So, as I mentioned, topping the bill, we've got Anthony Joshua taking on Otto Wallin. And for some reason, people are excited about this. For some reason, people seem to think that Otto Wallin, given what we know about him, that he's going to go in there and he's going to be a serious test and a genuine challenge for Anthony Joshua, and that this is somehow going to be a barn burner or an exciting fight. I don't know what you guys are watching, and I don't know where you guys are getting this information. Otto Wallin, now I've been following his career for a while, and those of you who have been following my channel will know I have never rated Otto Wallin. I never thought much about him, and if truth be told, to sum up the kind of fighter that Otto Wallin is, he, in my personal opinion, is the quintessential loser. He is the perfect, and I mean perfect, developmental fighter, developmental opponent for any heavyweight contender looking to build up their experience. Alright? He's a fighter who, in my opinion, has a record that is a little bit deceiving on paper. So, I've talked in the past, quite recently in fact, about how Anthony Joshua is at the stage of his career where he needs developmental fights, okay? He's already made a ton of money. He's already achieved greatness in the sport in terms of winning world titles and becoming a big pay-per-view draw and stuff like that. And he's been in very big, very consequential events, if you know what I mean. Now he's at a stage of his career where he's basically at a crossroads. You know, he has to decide whether or not he wants to gain some ambition and rebuild and become the best fighter he can possibly be, or does he just want to cash out? And obviously, with him fighting the likes of Otto Wallin and guys like that, he's obviously trying to develop, right? He's trying to improve his skills, his confidence, his stamina, and for that, he needs opponents who are going to present a very, very specific challenge for him. He doesn't want an opponent who is going to go in there full of ambition, with knockout power in both hands, looking to take him out, looking to upset the party. No, he needs opponents who are durable, who can give him rounds, who can ask questions of him, but are not generally going to be that dangerous. You know, he wants opponents who aren't punchers, opponents who aren't on a great winning streak where they've been looking great, knocking everybody out. No, he wants a guy who he can win comfortably against, but who's going to take him rounds. And Otto Wallin fits the bill perfectly, because like I said, Otto Wallin is a born loser. He is the quintessential opponent. He might as well have a sign on him during the fight hung round his neck that says opponent. That's what he might as well be. He's the opponent here. Okay, Otto Wallin consistently throughout his career has proven that he doesn't really have any power by heavyweight standards. Obviously, I exaggerate there, but you look at any of the top 20, top 30 heavyweight contenders, pretty much everybody hits harder than he does. And not only that, but he's also consistently proven that he isn't willing to put it all on the line to win. Okay, when he fought the biggest fight of his career against Tyson Fury, the pinnacle, literally the pinnacle of Otto Wallin's entire career, he absolutely blew it. He had the perfect opportunity to get a stoppage victory, which would have made him heavyweight champion, where he had Tyson Fury's head split open in front of him. Any half-decent heavyweight contender who had the ambition and drive to go out there and achieve victory would have taken Fury out that night in the state he was in. Otto Wallin wasn't willing to do it. Why wasn't he willing to do it? Because he's an opponent and he knows his role. Okay, he's not a guy who's willing to put it all on the line, go out there and have an all or nothing attitude. You know, he's not like Povetkin or someone like that. He's more like, he's more like Andy Ruiz, a guy who, yeah, he's talented and maybe on an off night he could upset you, but he's not a guy who is going to come from behind and let his hands go and put it all on the line to get the win. You know, he's a guy who would rather lose on points and be a game loser than put it all on the line to become a winner or potentially get knocked out. So I don't expect anything from Otto Wallin in this fight. I see him as the quintessential game loser that's being brought in to make Anthony Joshua look good. And I see that as a pretty standard fight. I think it's going to be a long, boring sparring session, if truth be told. And a pretty easy one for Anthony Joshua. I don't see it being entertaining at all. I don't see it being difficult at all. And I just see it as the same as Anthony Joshua's last couple of fights. So yeah, moving on from that, that's the main event. So literally, with this card that everybody's gushing over and ejaculating over, you've got really a developmental showcase fight as the main event for it. So the co-main event, or at least what I think is the co-main event, you've got Deontay Wilder taking on Joseph Parker. This one, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about, but it's a Deontay Wilder fight. So, by virtue of the fact that it's a Deontay Wilder fight, we all know exactly how the fight's going to go. Of course we do. Of course, Wilder is going to connect with the right hand. Right? He might barely land it, he might just touch Parker with his pinky finger. But we know the deal. He's going to land with the right hand, and Parker's going to be snoozing on the canvas, because that's how Deontay Wilder's fights go. Because Deontay Wilder doesn't accept real fights. Okay, we know this. Look, if you guys have been following my channel, then you obviously know this already. But for anybody who's new, let me educate you on how Deontay Wilder's career goes. Deontay Wilder doesn't accept fights unless you specifically state in the contract, you sign on the dotted line and say and confirm that you are going to take a right hand and you're going to go down and you're going to stay down. That's how Deontay Wilder's fights go. So when Joseph Parker gets hit with that pinky finger from Wilder's right hand, and the commentators say, "Whoa, look at the power! Look at the power of Deontay Wilder! Hardest hitting heavyweight of all time. Modern day Mike Tyson." Don't be surprised when that happens. Alright, expect it. So yeah, I don't need to say anything else about that. You know exactly what's going to happen in that fight. So again, it's a Deontay Wilder fight. They all go the same way. So moving on. So what else have we got? Got another heavyweight fight on the card, which a lot of people are interested in. And initially I thought that this was a fairly interesting fight. But the more I thought about it, the less interesting it was to me. Daniel Dubois is taking on Jarrell Miller. Now, Daniel Dubois, of course, is coming off a pretty humiliating defeat against Usyk, where he quit like an absolute coward, and after taking a knee from taking a jab, which is the second time in his career that he's done that. And yeah, he's going to be taking on Jarrell Miller. Now, Dubois is a pretty sizable favourite for the fight, but I've noticed that a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, in fact, the majority of people, from what I've observed, seem to be picking Jarrell Miller to win this fight. despite the fact he's like, what, a 5-1 underdog or something. A lot of people, most people, from what I can observe, are picking him to win. And the idea of Jarrell Miller winning this fight seems to be that at some point in the fight, he's going to apply pressure, and Daniel Dubois isn't going to be able to handle that pressure, and he's going to quit. So basically, because Dubois is an absolute pussy, an absolute coward with no heart, people think that he's going to be broken in this fight. I got to be honest, guys, I disagree. And I disagree strongly. Now, those of you, again, who have been following my channel for a while will know I have never, and I mean never, rated Jarrell Miller. I think Jarrell Miller is, to me, he's one of the most overrated heavyweight contenders in recent years. And I've always thought that. The only reason, and I mean the only reason, why Jarrell Miller has a winning record is because if you look at his record and you look at the guys he's fought nobody. Absolutely nobody. And the only guys he has fought who had any name recognition or were, at one point in time, credible heavyweight contenders were either considerably smaller than him, or they were old, in their 40s and past their prime, or both. you know, guys like Thomas Adamek, probably his best victories. So Jarrell Miller, he's been fighting little guys, guys half his size and significantly lighter than him, and he's been getting pieced up by these guys. The guy has zero defense. He's an absolute punching bag. He just walks forward, gets hit, and hopefully, like, for his sake, these smaller guys get tired of hitting him, and he's able to just lean on them and beat them up with those slow, sloppy, cumbersome punches of his. We found out, of course, that the guy was an absolute science experiment. He was juiced up to the gills on all sorts of different steroids, and of course he got caught before he was set to fight Anthony Joshua. And despite being a fat, slow, cumbersome punching bag prior to that, if you look at the fights he's had since, and he's been relatively inactive since due to being banned, but if you look at the fights he has had since, like his fight against Lucas Brown, he looks even fatter, even slower, even more cumbersome, even more clumsy, terrible punching technique, terrible footwork, no defense whatsoever. He's just a fat, useless lump of a guy with a decent chin. And does he even have a decent chin anymore? I mean, ever since, like I said, ever since getting caught with steroids, he hasn't looked as ferocious or as tenacious in the ring, has he? So, he's going to be going in there against Dubois. And say what you want about Dubois. I know Dubois is a hype job. I know he's a coward. I know he's got no heart. But the guy can punch, and he's going to land punches in this fight. Jarrell Miller is going to come forward. He's going to be right there to get hit. He's going to have no defense. He's never fought a puncher ever in his career, Jarrell Miller. If you look at his career, what big punchers has he ever fought in his career? Nobody. So he's going to be walking into punches all night. And if he is able to get Dubois into a position where Dubois is tired and he's struggling with the pace, and maybe he's thinking about quitting, and he's starting to hesitate a bit and not really know what to do to keep Miller off him, Miller will have taken one of the most horrendous beatings, and he will have taken that many punches by that point in the fight that I'm not so sure he'll even be able to stand. Like, by that stage of the fight, if Miller hasn't taken like a horrendous beating, I will be shocked. So I very much favour Daniel Dubois in this fight, and I think the odds reflect that. I had a look at the odds, and from what I can see, yeah, a lot of people are picking Jarrell Miller. A lot of people are betting on Jarrell Miller, but the odds have still got Daniel Dubois considerably as a favourite. So I think Jarrell Miller is going to take a beating. I think he's going to get horrendously exposed, and I think he's probably going to get stopped. So yeah, I'm not as optimistic about his chances as a lot of people are. Like I said, a lot of people are picking him. In fact, most people are. But I just don't see it, man. I think Jarrell Miller is a fat, slow, cumbersome, easy-to-hit plodder. And I think he's going to get taken out by the first big puncher he's ever fought. Obviously I exaggerate. He's fought heavyweights, but he hasn't fought anybody as big or as powerful or as young and close to their prime as Dubois. So yeah, I'm going with Dubois by stoppage in that fight. The other heavyweight fight, this one's no one's really praising this. This is kind of just a floater really on the card. Filip Hrgović is going to be fighting Mark Demori. I mean, need I say any more about that one? I mean, Filip Hrgović, I gotta be honest, Filip Hrgović is one of the biggest disappointments in heavyweight boxing. That guy is a complete and utter waste of space. His career has been a complete waste of time. He's been a pro for years now. When was it that Filip Hrgović turned pro? He's been pro for a long time. I think he's been pro for coming up 10 years now. And he has done nothing in that time. He's fought nobody. He's made no attempt to carve out a legacy for himself or to develop as a fighter. He's fought just bum after bum after bum after bum. I know he had that fight against Zhilei Zhang, which he was able to escape with a victory. A lot of people thought he lost it. I disagree. I thought he won that fight, but it was a very close fight. And let's be honest, he looked very poor in the process. I mean, Zhilei Zhang is very dangerous in the early rounds of a fight. But if you can make it through the early rounds and take him into the later rounds, he is absolutely useless. You know, he's slow, he's got no stamina, he's very easy to hit, very easy to time. He's very, you know, he's got very poor balance. He's off balance a lot of the time. He swings himself off balance because the guy's just clumsy and uncoordinated. And, you know, he's just your typical big, slow, clunky heavyweight. And Filip Hrgović wasn't really able to capitalise on that. He wasn't able to take him out. He wasn't able to back him up much. You know, he just kind of did that little bit more in each round and was able to just outwork and outlast Zhang. So I wasn't impressed with Filip Hrgović, even though I thought he won. And aside from that, he's just fought nothing but bums. And that's why, in my personal opinion, he hasn't developed. And I think he's actually gotten worse since the amateurs. Like, I genuinely think he has. If you look at his amateur fights and his stint in the World Series of Boxing, he actually looked better in those days than he does now. He was fitter, he was more athletic, he was faster, he seemed to have better punching technique, he seemed to be more motivated, seemed to be lighter on his feet, and seemed to be a lot more technically astute. Nowadays, he just looks like a big, useless, tired lump who is just grifting, really. You know, he's not interested in becoming heavyweight champion or really making a name for himself. He's just taking easy fights and getting paid. He's just making a living from boxing. You get a sense that boxing is basically his job, and that's all it is to him. So I've got no interest in Filip Hrgović. I don't even know why I'm even talking about the guy for so long. I think he's a complete waste of talent, and I think he should just retire. But I think it's pretty obvious what he's doing. He's trying to hold on to that mandatory that he won when he fought Zhilei Zhang, or even before. And you know, he's just taking easy fight after easy fight to keep ticking over until he gets a shot at a vacant title. You know, he made no attempt whatsoever to get that fight with Usyk. He had that fight on the plate ready for him, and he never pushed for it because obviously he doesn't want to fight Usyk. He doesn't think he can win that fight. He would rather get a bigger payday fighting like AJ or Fury or someone, or he would rather Usyk vacates the title, or one of these guys vacates the title so that he can fight for it vacant against an easy opponent. He would probably prefer that. So, yeah, very, very disappointing. Not much else to say about Filip Hrgović. Mark Demori is an absolute bum. He was knocked out in the first round by a shot to pieces David Haye coming off like a 5-year layoff and numerous injuries. And, you know, ever since then, what has Mark Demori even done? Like, the guy's been completely inactive ever since then. And again, the guy's done nothing of consequence his entire career. And he's like 40 years old now. So this is just an absolute mismatch. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a knockout within the first few rounds. So, yeah, complete mismatch. What else have we got on this card? We've got Dimitri Beledi. So this one isn't a heavyweight fight. But yeah, Dimitri Beledi defending his WBA heavyweight title against Lyndon Arthur in another horrendous mismatch. So yeah, card's not looking great so far, is it? You know, guys, Dimitri Beledi, and I know a lot of people like Beledi. I know that he's got a sizable amount of fans among like hardcore boxing fans. I gotta be honest, Dimitri Beledi bores me. I find the guy absolutely boring. And I think the truth is, It's nothing personal, but just for me, the truth is that he's not exciting to watch. His style is so boring. His career is boring. His fights are boring. And I just find the guy tedious. I can't actually sit through a single fight of his for some reason. Now, look, the thing with Dimitri Bivol, as far as I'm concerned, is he doesn't really take fights of consequence. And when he does take a fight that seems interesting, like his last fight against Gilberto Ramirez, it turns out to be a dud. And call me a cynic, but he's one of these guys, and I've talked about this many times on here, where whenever he's in the ring, it just looks to me like his opponents aren't even trying. I mean, Gilberto Ramirez had a lot of opportunities in that fight to land punches. He was the bigger man, the taller man, the stronger man. He was significantly bigger in that ring. And he just didn't let his hands go. He showed in the early rounds he could actually land punches from long range behind his southpaw jab if he wanted to. And he could land body punches quite easily on Bivol. But for whatever reason, he just never went through with it. And it was like he just gave up. I mean, he just did nothing for 12 rounds. I was expecting that to be a very competitive fight and one that would be back and forth all the way through. But Gilberto Ramirez, it was as if he just went in there for the payday. And that's the common denominator in boxing nowadays, is you get one guy who's supposed to win. It's basically predetermined for one guy to win. And then the other guy just does nothing. Or they try for a couple of rounds and then they just stop and do nothing for the rest of the fight. Kind of like Andy Ruiz did in the second AJ fight, and when he fought Joseph Parker, he did the same thing. He tried early on, but when he realised he probably wasn't going to win on the cards and the fight was going to go to points, he just stopped trying. He wasn't really willing to put it all on the line to get the win. And that was what I saw from Gilberto Ramirez when he fought Bivol. Same situation. He just wasn't interested. Wasn't interested in getting the win. He wanted to get paid. And he knew his role. He understood his role was to lose the fight. Now, Bivol's fighting Lyndon Arthur. And, domestic level Lyndon Arthur. A guy who wasn't even that good at domestic level, if truth be told. As far as I'm aware, and I haven't followed Lyndon Arthur's career that closely, but as far as I'm aware, Lyndon Arthur hasn't beaten anybody within the top 20 of any sanctioning body, aside from that first win over Anthony Yarde, where he ended up getting knocked out in the rematch. So, when you look at Lyndon Arthur and the fact that he's getting a world title shot, it just goes to show you that when it comes to boxing nowadays, you don't have to do anything whatsoever to get a title shot. Like, you don't have to do anything substantial, anything of note, anything impressive. You don't have to beat any ranked contenders. You don't have to get in line and fight through all the rankings to become mandatory. You don't have to do any of that. You don't even have to be good. You don't even have to have a winning record. I mean, Derek Chisora got a world title shot against Fury, despite being literally a journeyman. So you don't even have to be a winner to get a world title shot. You don't have to have a winning record. You don't have to do anything whatsoever. All you need to get a world title shot nowadays in boxing is to have the right promoter and to have a management situation where it's convenient to give you the title shot. And that's what Lyndon Arthur is. He's a convenient opponent for Dimitri Bivol. And the promoter who happens to be running this show, or one of them at least, Frank Warren, is involved with Lyndon Arthur. So that's how he's getting the title shot. So yeah, it makes no sense to me. Why are people excited about this card? I've absolutely no clue. It's a bunch of mismatches, a bunch of set-up fights, a couple of developmental fights, a couple of floaters. There is nothing on this card that intrigues me. There is nothing that in any way excites me. And as far as I'm concerned, every single one of these fights is utterly predictable. I will be very, very surprised if I get any of these predictions wrong. I'll be very, very surprised if Otto Wallin even comes to win. If Joseph Parker does anything but go down from the right hand and stay down. If Jarrell Miller does anything but take a horrendous beating and probably get stopped in the process. If Lyndon Arthur does anything except lose, you know. I mean, Lyndon Arthur, he might throw the jab here and there and kid on and give it a good go, British style. But let's be honest, he's going to lose. And yeah, that's that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and God bless.